Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. You'll have a class test on 11th of February between 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. So it will start around, say, you'll get around 55 minutes as your class hour. That start from 8 a.m. to 8:55 a.m. on 11th of February. Out of that 55 minutes, you will get only 25 minutes to answer your question. So you can join anytime and start your exam. And in that exam, you will not able to what you can say is go from one question to the other and then come back to this. So the questions will be sequential. That once you only answer the current questions, you will able to go. If you don't answer the current questions, then you will not able to come back to the current questions. So once you move forward, then you will not able to come back to the questions. So that I told you, if you drop messages, I won't able to read it. If you have to say something or you have any queries, unmute yourself and ask.
Which platform you will use, like Google Forms or Moodle?
No, it will be in Moodle.
Sir, and it would be MCQ, means MCQ based?
It is not only MCQ based. It may have some questions which are numerical, where you need to enter the numeric number.
Okay, so it would be like integer and MCQ. Both type.
Integer and MCQ, both type.
Sir, and
yeah, go on.
What is the syllabus from each part?
Whatever we cover until your 9th of February is part of your syllabus. So whatever we will cover until 9th of February, that is part of your syllabus. Okay.
Like we had 8 class of microeconomics,
yes.
4 class of macroeconomics, and
yes.
4 class, I think. And
in the past week we have not covered anything in this part.
And then we had Indian economics, right? So till 9th we will have Indian economics, or we will have other classes also, like
probably you will have another one class or so on macro, but most like, let me check the calendar.
So can you please share means that timetable part with us if possible?
Timetable,
like class distribution.
We have not done that. What we have done is we are once we complete a unit, then we are changing. Okay. Say we are covering a subject, or say like I am discussing this, only when I'll cover this, complete this part in your section, then I'll move to another section. Otherwise, if I left it in between and go to some other subject, then it becomes very difficult.
Like, sir, in the macroeconomics, sir was discussing investment function, but I don't think so it was completed, like it was left. Like, sir was
if it is not, any units is not completed, then that will not be there. Okay.
Okay.
All the sections. Anyways, sir will maybe take your class from 8th or 8th, 9th. So that time they will let you know. Anyway, I'll drop you a mail regarding that also. But I'll only able to drop a mail around that 8th, or maybe Sunday on 7th.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so once we complete this what do you call it, or this week classes, then only will
Like, sir,
everything.
in this week we will have most of the classes will be of Indian economics, and we will have 1 or 2 classes of the micro or macro.
So this week I'm taking your classes.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So tomorrow and also Thursday. Okay. So after that we'll see.
Sir, what is the date of the examination?
It's 11th of February. We're going to please meet some of you. Yeah. If you're not speaking, please keep yourself muted. Okay. Otherwise, make lots of noise.
Sir, and also how many questions will be there in the 25 minutes?
20 questions. You'll get 25 minutes. Hopefully people do.
We will have like 8 to 9, like that we can do anytime, like in that schedule.
Anytime.
We'll have the buffer time. Remaining would be the buffer time.
No, there's no buffer time. You will get once you log in, you only have 25 minutes, not more.
Yes, sir. Means we will have like period would be 8 to 9. We need to attempt it between 8 to 9, right?
8 to 9. You can
And
log in.
we will be given 25 minutes for our attempt.
Not exactly 8 to 9. It will from 8:05 to sometimes between 8:55. We will not go beyond 8:55.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Because 8:55 your class hour is over officially, so we will not go beyond 8:55. So it will be 8 to 8:55. Okay.
Sir,
Anyway,
can you please upload MS
Yeah.
Teams?
Yeah.
Sir, can you please upload these files in MS Teams?
I'm not. Which files?
So the files that you're teaching from the PDF.
I am not teaching from any PDF. I am teaching from this PPT. But I have not sent you this PPT.
No, sir, you haven't
Oh,
sent.
okay. I have shared it with your friends or in other sections. I'll send it. Let me send it. Any other questions?
Hello.
Yeah, go on.
So we have to submit the project report.
Yeah, you have to
Right.
submit the project report.
I mean, can you give us the basic design, like how much pages and what topics to cover?
It's up to you.
Okay.
It's up to you. How many pages, how many words, what's the topic? Everything is on you. The topic should be in the field of economics. Any field, it's not confined to the subject we are teaching. If you have interest in any other field also, you can take this, nothing. And how many pages, how many words, what is the title, all depends upon you. Only thing is, you should not copy paste it from a single source.
Sir, what is the deadline for submitting the project?
This is, I believe, 2nd of March. Anyway, I've sent the PPT to you over ERP, okay? So the same PPT I am using. So, okay, already. Are you able to see the PPT?
No, sir.
No. Yeah, now it's good. Okay. So what we have been discussing was the capitalism as an economics structure or economic system, which partially explained the changes we are observing from generation to generations in the last 200 years or so. Only in that last 200 years or so, we've been observing there are significant changes occurring in terms of your standard of living, even in terms of other life of human beings. And one of the key answer to these changing things is capitalism. What this capitalism also has done has led us to specialization. If we look around the object in our house, let's say the tablet I am using, or the desktop I am using, or the headphone I am using, or the mobile you people may be using, we do not know the person who made them. And similarly, the clothes we are using, we do not know who made those clothes. In a primitive world, with our ancestors, or imagine the situations in 1776 when Adam Smith wrote his book, The Wealth of Nations. Then if we ask the same questions, that who has made these objects we are using, or the things we are using, then the answer might have been different. But today we do not know. At that time when Adam Smith was writing his book, The Wealth of Nations, then the families were producing the most of the goods for their own use, including your rice, wheat, and so forth, even meat, clothing, and even the simple tools they were using for cultivations like the bullock carts and so forth. So many of the things at that time people were using were either made by a member of the family or somebody in the village where they were living. But now that has been changed significantly because of our specialization. Why these changes has occurred? Because of the specializations, and this specialization has been fostered by our economic structure. As we know, these specializations leads to more production of goods and services. Why these specializations increases productivity of labor, or we say we can produce more with the same input, because of three things. That is learning by doing. And what we mean by this learning by doing, when you do one thing time and again, then we may learn things or two through which we may do the things more quickly in a better way, so that we can produce more. For instance, if someone do cultivation of rice time and again over a time period, then the person may come to know different aspects of cultivation. So that is what we call is the learning by doing. So when you have specialized in one particular production or aspect of production, then we may acquire skills as we produce things. Then each individuals may be different from other individuals in their ability, what we call as the innate ability. There are natural difference in the ability of individual. For instance, some of you may be good at playing cricket and some of you may be good at playing badminton. So if you pursue or if you do things where you have the natural ability, then you may do it in a better way, and then you may produce that thing more. So this difference in ability that implies that the skill or natural surrounding such as the quality of soil. Some people are better at producing something than others. So when you do specializations, then we may be using our innate ability differences to produce more. And third one is economies of scale. What do you mean by these economies of scale is producing a large number of units of some good is often cost effective than producing a small number of things. And economics of scale occur when doubling all inputs to the production process more than doubles the output. Then we say that is economics of scale. For instance, if you have two inputs and we are producing output O, with two inputs K and L, then we increase the inputs 2 times and producing output O1. So now our inputs are 2K and 2L. Now, if our O1 is more than 2 times that of our O, then we'll say there is economies of scale. So, because doubling the inputs, we are more than doubling the output. So that is why that economies of scale operate when we have specialization and we produce more. But people will only be specialized if and only if they can get the other things they require. And in the capitalist society or in the capitalist economic structure, this is done via market. So if you are specialized in producing, say, something, let's say you are specialized in producing rice, then if you only able to get other things like clothing and say meat and milk, oil, all those things, or say computers or so forth, other than the rice, then you only will specialize. Otherwise, you will not specialize. And this in a capitalist economic structure, market facilitates to get other things when you specialized in a particular item, say rice or so. So we can look into an example where we can see how specializations leads to accomplish an external result of what you call is producing so many things. Or in other words, we can take a simple example to illustrate how specialization leads to more production. So for this, let's assume there are two individuals, Greta and Carlos, and both of them have 200 hours of work available. So both of them, 2000 hours of work available to both of them in a year. And if Greta devote all of her 2000 hours of work to apple production, then she will produce 1250 apples. Or if she devotes all 2000 hours of work to wheat production, then she will produce 50 tons of wheat. Similarly, if Carlos devote all of his 2000 hours of work to apple production, then he will be producing 1000 apples. Or if he devotes all of his 200 or 2000 hours of work to wheat production, then he will produce what you call is the 20 tons of wheat. Here you can see Greta has absolute advantage in producing both the crops, and Greta has comparative advantage in wheat, and Carlos has comparative advantage in apples. Here, what we are saying is the absolute advantage. A person or a country has absolute advantage if the production of a good in the production of a good, if the input it uses to produce this good are less than in some other person or a country, then that we call the absolute advantage. So as in this case, you see Creta as input using the same inputs can produce more of the both the goods, therefore Creta has absolute advantage. And we say comparative advantage, a person has comparative advantage in production of a particular good if the cost of producing an additional unit of that good relative to the cost of producing another good is lower than another person or country is cost of produce the same two goods. So here what you is looking at is in case of Creta, if you see Creta can produce 2.25 more times of wheat using the same inputs for wheat, whereas 1.25 times more apples compared to Carlos. So if you compare these, what you see from Creta's point of view, it has more advantage in producing wheats, therefore we are saying Creta has comparative advantage. In case of, yeah? Hello? Abhijit Chaudhary, are you saying something?
Sorry sir, गलती से mic on हो
गया. So that is why we are saying Creta has comparative advantage in wheat production. Similarly, in case of Carlos, if you look at Carlos, Carlos has least disadvantage in producing apples. So we say the Carlos has comparative advantage in apple production. So given these informations, if we
Excuse me, sir.
yeah.
Sir, I did not understand that how Carlos has a comparative advantage in apples.
Okay, so what we are saying is in case of Carlos, if you go back, okay, it's not coming. Yeah, now, okay. So as you see, Creta spend all her time, say 2000 hours in a year, and producing apple, she would produce 1250 apples. If she only produces wheat, she would produce 50 tons per annum. So what you see here in compared to Carlos, she is producing more of both the goods, therefore she has a comparative, she has a absolute advantage in both the goods. Now if you compare, now it is you are comparing both the goods for both the persons, so in a relative sense. So in the relative sense, if you look at from Creta's point of view, Creta can produce a 2.25 times more wheats than Carlos, whereas she can produce 1.25 times more apples than Carlos. So if you are comparing this, then what you are saying is Creta has a greater advantage in producing wheat. Therefore, we are saying Creta has a comparative advantage in wheat. I believe up to this is fine. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now look at from the Carlos point of view. What is the in terms of disadvantage Carlos has? Okay. So in terms of disadvantage Carlos has, so in terms of say apples, Carlos now producing 0.8 times of Creta's apples. Okay, and if you look at in terms of what you call is in terms of wheat, it is producing 0.4 times of Creta's wheat. So if you compare these two, now where Carlos has more advantage, relative advantage of producing the goods compared to Creta. If you look at from that point of view, you see now Carlos has better advantage of producing apples than that of wheats, because now Carlos is producing 0.8 times or 0.8 times of what Creta is producing in terms of apple, whereas he is only producing 0.4 times of what is Creta is producing in terms of wheat. So here you will see we see Carlos is producing less than Creta in both the goods, because it's but if you look at the disadvantage Carlos has least disadvantage in producing apples, because he is producing 0.8 times of Creta. That is why we are saying Carlos has comparative advantage in apple production compared to the advantage he has with respect to wheat production. That is why we are saying Carlos has a comparative advantage. Okay, is it fine?
Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you. Now coming to here this is the column 1. The first two rows, that wheat and apples, are for Creta, and the second one is for Carlos, and the last one is the total combined. The first column of this table shows that when when Creta is spending 30% of her time producing apples and 70% of your time in producing wheat, then this is the self-sufficient conditions. So they are not trading here when they are self-sufficient. So both of them are producing both the goods for their consumption. Now when Creta is devoting 30% of her time on apples and 70% of her time on on wheat production. Then he is producing 500 apples and 30% of your oh no, this is 40% of time in apple production. So then only it will be 500. Yeah. Let me change the color also. So it is 40% of our time on this and 60% of our time on this. Then she is producing 500 apples and 30 tons of wheat. Now in case of Carlos, let's say he is spending 30% of his time on apples and 70% of his time on wheat, and he is producing 300 apples and 14 tons of wheat. Now if you see here, the total they are producing 800 apples and 44 tons of wheat. Now this is when they are self-sufficient, there is no specialization. Now as we said, Creta has a comparative advantage in producing wheat, therefore Creta specialized on wheat production, so devoted 100% of his time on wheat and produces 50 tons. So this column 2 and 3 represent when there is trade and specialization. Similarly, in case of Carlos, he specialized in apple production because he has comparative advantage. So he's devoting all his 2000 hours of work and producing 1000 units of apples. Now when there is trade, because both of them needs both wheat and apples. Now in terms of trade, Creta give away 15 units of or 15 tons of wheat, and if we have a trade-off that 1 tons of wheat is equal to 40 apples, that is the terms of trade, then he is getting 600 units of apple and 1500 of wheat, or 15 tons of wheat is given away to Carlos, and similarly Carlos give away 600 units of apples to get these 1500 tons of wheat. So now you can see each one of them consuming more than what is there in the self sufficiency mode, and now Creta sells 50 tons of wheat in order to buy say 600 apples. She can now consume more apples and more wheat than before, and as this table shows that buying the 15 tons of wheat produced by Creta in return for 600 apples similarly enables Carlos to consume more of both goods than was possible in the absence of specialization. So when you have specialization, now we can see they are producing 1000 units of apple and 50 tons of wheat, whereas when in case of specialization only they are able to produce 800 apples and 44 tons of wheat. So what we see, specialization help us to produce more. So and why this specialization is possible? The specialization is possible because trade is possible. And why the trade is possible? Because we have markets. So market contribute to increase the productivity of labor, can therefore help to explain the hockey stick of history by allowing people to specialize in production of goods for which they have a comparative advantage. That is, the things at which they are, relatively speaking, least bad. So that is why we, how this capitalism helps in explaining that hockey stick type of growth in our GDP. But can we say that capitalism caused this hockey stick of growth? Because when you are saying cause and effect, we are stating one is cause, the other is the effect. So in science, we support the statement that X causes Y by understanding the relationship between cause X and effect Y, and performing experiment to gather evidence by measuring X and Y. So in case of a scientific experiment, we say X causing Y. So so this X become your cause and Y become your effect. So in this case, we are saying capitalism as your cause and GDP per capita growth is the effect. But as we have observed that capitalism is not simple two variable cases. Capitalism is a complex issue. So when we are talking about such complex phenomena causing something else, like increase in living standard or technological improvement or network of world, that is connection of world, or the environmental challenges, therefore we should be bit of skeptical when we are claiming such thing. So we make this causal statement in economics to understand why things happen, or to devise ways of changing something so that the economy works better. This means making a causal statement that policy X is likely to cause change Y. For example, in case of India, we may say the demonetization policy, or what you call it, our GST, change in the GST may affect our economic success. So we are saying the cause is the demonetization or the GST policies, and the effect is the GDP progress or the standard of living. To explain this cause and effect thing in context of capitalism, whether capitalism caused that hockey stick of growth, why there is a capitalism, or the why there is why economists have some what you can say they do not claim it as straight, or why there is a controversy in the sense capitalism causing hockey stick type of growth. We observed capitalism emerge at the same time or just before these industrial revolutions and the upward turn in our hockey stick in the GDP. This would be consistent with the hypothesis that capitalist institutions were among the cause of the era of continuous prosperity we have observed. But the emergence of free-thinking cultural environment known as the Enlightenment also the free-thinking cultural environment, the free-thinking cultural environment, which is known as your Enlightenment, also coincided with that obtained in your hockey stick. So, was it is the capitalist institutions or culture or both that cultural environment changes happened, both have caused this capitalism, because as capitalism emerged, you have this kink in the hockey stick. At the same time, we have this enlightenment also occurring or coincided with that time. So we may one may argue it is not the institutions of the capitalist economic structure, but the cultural changes happening at that time, which is also coincided with that. Probably you can explain those upturn in the hockey sticks type of growth we have observed for the per capita income. But we have a natural experiment available to us which help us to see or tell that capitalism probably explain those hockey stick type of upturn than that of the Enlightenment. What is this natural experiment we have is, we say something is having natural experiment or an empirical study that exploit the natural occurring events, and one such event has happened in the post World War, Second World War, post Second World War, when Germany was divided into two separate economies. One is centrally planned in the East Germany and the capitalist in the West Germany. So after the Second World War, Germany was divided into two separate economies. One is the East Germany, the other one is the West Germany. East Germany was practicing what we call is the centrally planned economic system, whereas the West Germany was practicing mostly the capitalist economic structure. And the mobility of resources between those two countries then, that is Germany and West Germany, was very, very limited. It was so limited that though then the British Prime Minister Winston Churchill described as the division between East and West Germany as iron cottons. So if we look at their progress, furthermore, if you look at the living standard before the Second World War, both in East and West Germany, then they were more or less in the same standard. So this is a suitable setting. So before the World War, the living standard in both the countries were same. So this become a suitable setting for using the natural experiment method. With the introduction of the centralized planning in East Germany, private properties, market and farms virtually disappear, which are the key institutions of your capitalist economic system. Decisions about what to produce, how much and in which plant to produce, or other economics or economic activities were taken not by the private individual but by the government officials. So the official managed this economic organization did not follow the principle of capitalism and produce and goods and services that customers would buy at a price above their cost of manufacturing. Whereas in case of West Germany remained a capitalist economy. So the East Germany, as you can see from this figure, East Germany GDP per capita remain less than that of your per capita GDP of West Germany. Furthermore, you can see from this figure that the Japan and Spain, which were having less GDP per capita than that of East Germany, they surpassed East Germany and their per capita income increases. So this shows that capitalism, in fact, may have contributed towards the sustained and rapid progress of living standard, which we are measuring through GDP per capita. But can we say this capitalism is equally successful in all economies? Probably not. So that we'll discuss how and when capitalism will successful in different countries, and when capitalism is successful in different extent in different countries. This leads to what we call is divergence in growth in different economies, and that we'll discuss in the next class. Let me download your Atenas. Yeah. Yes. Any questions? Adrija Ray?
Yes, sir.
Any questions?
No, sir, I understood it.
Okay.
Sir, we are measuring development per capita here, right? But
Yes.
in capitalism, the major criticism of capitalism is that the distribution of the wealth is very non-uniform. So that might be something that is not being seen in the data. Maybe could that be true?
No, we have already seen that. In fact, if you look at the first two graphs given in these PPTs, one is there are 2 points we have observed. One is say particularly after 1980s and so forth, we have a sustained GDP per capita growth, but at the same time we see the rise in inequality. So the capitalism has led to also increase in inequality, and this increase in inequality not only within the countries, because capitalism favors those people, those who have access to capital, because those who have the capitals, that capital goods, they become the owner of the farms, and then they earn the profit, and that profit goes to them. So that is why it not only increase the inequality within the country, that also increases inequality across the country, and that across the country inequality we'll see in terms of divergence in growth in the next class. Yeah, that's, you are correct that one of the key limitations of capitalism has been the rise in inequality, not only within country but also across countries. Anything else?
Sir, in the beginning, we were told that an assignment was supposed to be done by everyone, and
Yes.
the topics should be released. So,
Topics should be released. I didn't get that point.
basically, we weren't told much about it. It was like we would get a certain topic,
Yes.
Macroeconomics, microeconomics, and we would have to make a report on it.
Yes.
So, have those topics been released yet, or?
No topics been released. The topic depends upon you. Any topic of your interest you can take. You have to submit an assignment in a topic related to economics. We are not going to assign you any topic. The topic should be chosen by you of your interest, and you submit, but that topic should be related to economics. There are two riders only in your assignment submission. First rider is the topic you choose should be linked to economics, and the second rider is you should not copy paste it. Other things depends upon.
In what depth we have to write?
What?
Sir, in what depth we have to write? Like we have to write superficially, or we have to write in depth?
You
like
should
how
write
many pages we have to write?
number, as I said, it depends upon you. Everything depends. You should write in depth. There is no superficial writing sort of thing. You should write it in depth, but number of pages, number of words, it depends upon you. But you have to submit in a Word or PDF format.
Sir, should it be handwritten for sure, or
No, it's not handwritten. It should be. If you can do on handwritten, it is good and fine, but we do not force it on you. It's better to submit it in a Word document. I'll give you an email ID to which that should be shared. Okay.